let us know. That's September the 18th. And also prayer meeting on Thursday nights is this Thursday night. Starts again. They meet in my office. And Youth Quake is on Thursday night. So just keep that in mind. So we are making our way through a series. And the series is called Necessary Sins. And sometimes how many people here sin? Okay, I'm just waiting for the rest of you. Because you wouldn't want your first sin to be in church. But we all sin. You know, we all make mistakes. But sometimes we just say, you know what? There's certain sins that we do that have just become acceptable. And they become okay. So we know that murder's not okay. We know that, you know, that rape was not okay. Or we know that stealing is not okay. But sometimes we've just become okay with some sins. And we think those sins are necessary. We have to do those or it's going to make life really difficult. And so last week we talked about the first necessary sin. And how many remember what it was? It was lying. And sometimes, I don't think probably no one here, probably, but sometimes we lie. And you know that God hates, it says that he detests lying. And sometimes we think that lying is necessary because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And so someone comes and says, like your spouse might say this to you, like, how does I look in this dress? Or one time, my wife's not here today, okay, so you'll have to, but one time I asked my wife if the shirt made me look chubby. And she said, no, your face does. See, that wasn't very nice of her to say that. I can't remember if she actually said that or if that was just happening in my head. But anyways, let's pretend. But you know, sometimes we think sins, we become so normal. We think, oh, it's just small. It's just a small sin. Or someone calls your house and says, hey, can I talk to so-and-so? And they're right there, and we say, oh, no, they're not here. No one's ever done that. But you know, other people do that. They say, no, they're not here, but they really are here. But then our kids see us do that. And I shared a story last week. I said there's one time, and I'm sure there's more than once, but there's one time I can remember in particular that I lied to Penny. And it was about something that I thought was insignificant. And I remember her finding out that I had lied or I'd left out information. And I remember her being upset and saying, you know, Troy, the problem is if you'll lie about that, what else will you lie about? And see, and that's the truth, is that we think that sometimes a little lie is okay. But the Bible tells us that a little leaven leavened the whole lump. Like a little bit of yeast leavens the whole lump. So we talked about lying, and we talked about the fact that we lie to each other. And we do lie to each other, and we shouldn't. It's not a necessary sin. And sometimes when we lie to each other, it's not just that we lie to one person, but we're also lying to God. And we lie to ourselves. I think that's the biggest lie of all, probably, is the lies that we tell ourselves. Yeah. We tell ourselves, you know, we're not good enough, or we tell ourselves that we're amazing when we're not amazing. The Greek word for truth means, we talked about this last week, is to be laid bare or to be without cover. And our goal to be, as Christ followers, needs to be people that are laid bare, that are without cover. And so that was our first necessary sin. Today we're talking about a necessary sin. And I'm going to tell you, this is not going to be easy. Okay? Because I think every single one of us, even Bert, every one of us does this. And so it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I bet someone else does that. All of us do it. And it's a sin that we've just decided, I think, that it's just a small thing. It's just necessary. And it's gossip. Now, Elmo told me a joke this morning, and I don't know if this joke is funny or not, but I'm going to run it past you, okay? He thought it was hilarious. When he told me, no, Elmo thought the joke was hilarious. But here it is. There was these three guys, and they were having trouble. And they had trouble with something and they needed help with. So they went to a pastor, and the pastor was going to pray with them about what they had trouble with. Okay, so I'm a little sketchy on details because I only heard the joke like 15 minutes ago, but here it is. So the first guy goes to the pastor, and the pastor says, "What do you want prayer for?" And he said, "Listen, I need prayer because I really struggle with..." See, I told you the details were stretched, just sketchy. Gambling.
Yep, that was three pastors.
Just be quiet, okay? I'll tell the jokes. Okay. All right, so he says, "I have trouble with gambling." So he says, "Okay, well, we're going to pray." I guess it was three pastors then, I guess. So they prayed for him, and he went on his way. The next pastor says, "Okay, I have struggles. I have a struggle I need to pray for, and I struggle with..." God, no, next guy. Never mind, no. Okay, so the first guy says, I need to have prayer because I gamble. The next guy says, "I need prayer because I steal." So they prayed for him. And the third guy walks up and he says, "Okay, pastor, what do you need prayer for?" And he said, "Listen, I need prayer because I have a problem with gossip, and I can't wait to get out of here." So you guys thought it was funny, yeah? Okay. Gossip. It's this thing that we talk about stuff around the water cooler at work, or we say things like, "Well, you're not going to believe this, but..." And we talked about a prayer last week, and this is a prayer that I think we should pray again today. It says this in Psalm 139. "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting." Psalm 139, 23 to 24. I think that if we're honest and we really pray this prayer, "Search me, O God," that today's topic will be difficult for a lot of us. It's an important topic. And as a pastor, I know you're probably going to find this hard to believe, but as a pastor, I get gossiped about a lot. People say things that I said that I didn't say. They say things that whatever the opposite of that is. They say things about me, and it just happens. And you hear things like, "Well, you know what, things aren't the same as they were when Silas was around. The good old days. So if Silas was still around, I wouldn't be." That's what they're trying to say. But we have this idea of gossip, and it's just become almost necessary. We think it's no big deal. You know, everyone does it. Like, how are we supposed to not do it when we're at work and someone drops by my office or my cubicle or by my construction site and says, "Hey, did you hear this?" And we don't think it's a big deal. But what is gossip? Here's a definition by Rick Warren. He says this: "When we're talking about a situation with somebody who is neither part of the problem or part of the solution, then we're probably gossiping. If we're talking with someone who isn't part of the problem or part of the solution, then it's probably gossip." That's a good rule to listen by. If I'm talking to someone who's not part of the problem, I mean, Junior's never a problem, or part of the solution, then it's probably gossip. If me and Junior are talking about Fern and we're not trying to help him, we're just saying, "If you can't believe it," then that's probably gossip. Proverbs 6, 16 to 19 says this: "There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him." So when the Lord starts putting things in an order that you think, "Oh, he hates these things," we probably should pay attention to what these things are. But if you don't go and read this, you're probably going to think, "Oh, I know what those things are." It's going to be things like murder and this and all these big sins. But here's what it says. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, a heart that makes evil plans, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in a community. A lot of these things have to do with things we say. And they can be put in the conversation of gossip. And that's kind of scary, that the Lord hates these things. Why does God hate gossip so much? If you're here and you're a parent, doesn't matter, whatever role you're as a parent, but if you're here and you're a parent, if someone was to gossip about me or say something bad about me, that's one thing. As a parent, if someone was to say something bad about you as a parent, that's one thing. But doesn't everything change when someone says something bad about your kids? Oh, it's game over then. Like, I'm not saying moms are worse than dads, but they're both, like, moms are worse than dads, is what I'm saying. Is really what I'm trying to say. But I mean, you can say what you want about me, but you cross over the line to Alex or to Noah, it's on like Donkey Kong. And I wonder if that's why God hates gossip so much. Is that the Father hates people gossiping about his children. Oh, you mark that down. But you know what? I believe that's part of it. I believe that God hates the fact that I would say something about his child. But there's something, and I'm going to be totally honest, there's something that's really attractive about the sin of gossip. And we get caught in that. Why do we participate in gossip? Well, it says this in Proverbs 18:8. The words of the gossip are like choice morsels or little bits of food. They go down to the innermost part. But there's something really attractive about gossip. Why is that? Why do we participate in gossip? I think a few reasons are. Number one, we do it because it makes us feel important. If we're honest, then we know something that not a lot of other people know. Gossip. The truth is, we enjoy hearing dirt on other people. Now, we don't put it in this terms because this sounds way too unspiritual. Okay, so we wouldn't say, I love gossip because I just like to feel important. Or I love gossip because I love hearing dirt on someone else. And it makes me realize that makes me feel like I'm better than I actually am, and they're worse. We wouldn't say that out loud, but that's the truth. The truth is, sometimes we like to hear gossip because it makes other people look bad, which makes us feel better. See, because the problem in our world today is and I'm on Facebook, so I appreciate Facebook for what it is. But the problem with it is that everybody who's on Facebook is looking at Facebook. So I go to Rochelle's profile on Facebook. And Rochelle, has all these beautiful pictures of her family and all these beautiful pictures. And she puts only her best pictures on there. Because no one puts bad pictures of themselves on Facebook. You go to take a selfie and you got to take 19 before you get one that just like hides your chins just perfect. And I'm not speaking from experience, I'm just saying. But you know what I mean? And we compare our private lives to people's public lives. Because they put their best life on Facebook. But we live with ourselves. And so that we think, well, look at all these people running around having great times with their family, and we're just doing nothing. But we compare people's public to our own private. And that sets us up for discouragement. And so when we hear some gossip, it helps us feel better that other people aren't as good as we think they are. And it makes us feel better. Sometimes we like to listen for gossip because we're dissatisfied with our own life. We're just not happy with our life. Sometimes we like to gossip because we're insecure. Now, everyone's insecure to some degree. I'm insecure, you're insecure, all of us are insecure to some degree. But none of these, not one single one, is a good reason to gossip. I can remember when I was about 23, I was at my first church, and I was sitting right where Marielle is sitting, and I was sitting there, and it was before church, it was in a prayer meeting, and I remember this, when I was 23, like I didn't really feel like I knew that much at that time in my life, but I was just sitting there, and this gentleman walked up to me. And he walks up to me, and he stands in front of me, and he starts to talk to me. And first of all, it started off real nice, started to talk to me, and it was friendly. And then it started to then he started to switch and talk about the senior pastor. And he wasn't coming right out and saying bad things, but he was trying to get his point across, that he was displeased, that he wasn't happy, and he started to gossip to me. And I remember in that moment, even though I didn't know much, I remember thinking, this is really bad. Like, this is my boss, my friend. This is really, really bad. And I remember standing up and walking up to the man and punching him. No, I didn't do that. I remember standing up and walking up to him and saying, you know what, this sounds like you really have a problem here. Maybe me and you should go right now and talk to the pastor and get this figured out. And he was like, no, I'm fine. I was just sorry. Oh, I think you misunderstood what I was trying to say, and everything's fine. And that was the last time, because that gossip went and told all his gossiping friends, don't gossip to Troy. That's the wrong dude. But why do we gossip? Because we like to have information. Here's a few things that you can write down that could help you run this through your mind about gossip. How do I know if this is gossip or not? Is my conversation helpful or hurtful? That's one. Is this conversation helpful or is it hurtful? Is this going to be good for the situation or bad for the situation? It says this in Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up. Ephesians 4:29. Proverbs 16:27-28 says this. Scoundrels, it says, scoundrels create trouble. Their words are destructive blaze. A troublemaker plants seeds of strife. Gossip separates the best of friends. Proverbs 16:27-28. Is this conversation helpful or is it hurtful? But you have to be honest. You have to be really honest, because you can try to disguise a hurtful conversation and say, oh, I'm just trying to be helpful, when really we're just trying to gather information. We can disguise gossip in what they call a compliment sandwich. We can say, wow, this person is so awesome, I really like them. But did you hear this? But I really love them anyways. It's like a sandwich. 2 compliments with gossip shoved in the middle. One thing that I see happen lots is that prayer meetings turn into gossip. It's not intentional. People don't intend for it to happen. But it's an easy way to disguise concern in a prayer request. I told you this wasn't going to be easy. Oh, did you hear blah, 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 blah? Oh, and could you pray for her? And then people will say this, but it's okay to talk about it. It's not gossip if it's true. Remember this. Everything that is said should be true. But not everything true should be said. Everything that we say should be true. But not everything true needs to be said. I have a friend. This is not someone from around here, but I have a friend. And he will say anything to anyone. And he just thinks, well, I'm just being truthful. But just because it's true doesn't mean everything should be said. Doesn't mean we should lie. Everything that is said should be true, but not everything that's true should be said. Sometimes it's okay to say nothing, unless you're asked. Is this hurtful or is this helpful is number one. Number two is, am I making something that is private public? Am I making something private public? That's a good way to decide if this is gossip or not. If Colleen comes and tells me something, and she tells me something that's private. If I go to another group of people and say, I've taken something that's private, and I've made it public. That's gossip. It says this in Proverbs 11, 12 to 13. It is foolish to belittle one's neighbor. A sensible person keeps quiet. A gossip goes around telling secrets, but those who are trustworthy can keep confidence. And we do this in all different types of ways. Husbands and wives get in a fight, and one of them goes and takes something private and makes it public. And then the wife or the husband, they move on, but the people they've made it public to, the relationship is hurt. One thing in our family is, I don't know about you guys, but me and Penny have been together for 20 years, roughly, been married for 18 years, and we've never had an argument. I couldn't even keep a straight face for that. Okay, okay, so we've had a few. But, I just lied. No, we're just like everyone else. We've had our disagreements, we've had our arguments, we've had our things. But one thing that we've really concentrated in our marriage is that when something happens in private, that I don't take that and bring it to, say, my parents. Because I'm taking something private and I'm making it public. And just in a little while, when she bats her eyes at me and I forgive her, or usually she forgives me, everything's going to be okay. But then we've caused problems in other relationships when we take something from private and we make it public. There's an old saying that says, adultery didn't kill the marriage. Gossip did. Often people can recover from almost anything. But recovering from the gossip and the stories and the backbiting is almost... And so in our culture that we live in today, we don't get on the phone. Remember the old shows where something would happen and then they would start calling around on their rotary phones with the cords? And they would call and say, oh, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe that happened. We don't have to do that anymore. We can tell 500 people in 2 seconds just by putting it on Facebook. We don't need a telephone. Or we can tweet out something that's gossip, and we can just tweet it out, and however many people are following you on Twitter. And this has created an epidemic in our lives, in our schools. Bullying has become an epidemic, and bullying is, in a lot of ways, is a form of gossip. And it's made itself, because most bullying isn't like we pictured in our mind from 20 years ago, where there's a big person that comes and punches you in the nose and tips you upside down and shakes your lunch money out. It's not like that anymore. It's texting and Snapchat and Facebook, and it's all of these things that's created this culture. But the culture isn't just bullying, the culture is gossip. And so they start and they create groups of each other, and they say, you know what, so-and-so did this and this and this and this and this. And it spreads like wildfire. And people can't recover. They could recover easier if someone just punched them in the nose, shook them upside down, and took their lunch money. That'd be easier. And whoever coined the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, they should be not allowed to create things. But culture has changed, and gossip has changed, but the Bible's stance on gossip hasn't changed. We need to be very careful to be people who protect ourselves and protect others. It says this in Proverbs 25:9-10. When arguing with your neighbor, don't betray another person's secret. Others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never again have a good reputation. See, it's not just about protecting the other person, it's about protecting yourself. Because you've got to be able to say, I have a good reputation. And if you tell me what, I will not share our secrets. Number one, was this helpful or hurtful? Am I making private matters public? And this is probably the most hidden form of gossip. And here it is. Am I letting others gossip? People picture the gossip as the person who just does the talking. But I want you to know that gossip takes two people. It takes a talker and it takes a listener. And if you only have a talker, it's just someone talking to themselves. And it won't go anywhere. But as soon as you have a talker and a listener, then you have gossip. You can't have gossip with just a listener because then there's nothing to listen to. And you can't have gossip with a talker because it's just someone talking to themselves. You need both. And without both, there is no gossip. It says this in Proverbs 17:4. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander. I want you to know today that it's not just wrong to speak gossip. It's equally as wrong to listen. I had a man from years ago come to me recently. Come to me to see if everything was okay in our relationship. And I said, listen, you gossiped a lot. And his answer was, I never said a word. My response was, you didn't have to. Because listening is gossip. And it was a real moment of for him. Not just speaking is gossip, it's wrong to listen. And he write this down. What you permit, you promote. What you permit to happen, you promote. You encourage. You elevate. So if you let people gossip to you, you promote that. There's an old saying that says this. If they do it with you, they'll do it to you. And you should be very aware of people that come to you and say, because you can be sure that when they leave your conversation, they're going to go to someone else and say, if they do it with you, they'll do it to you. You say, how do I know? How will I know if it's gossip? Run it through those three things. And sometimes it's very subtle. It's not like, oh, this is definitely gossip. Like if someone came to you and said, oh, Troy did this and this and this and this, then you would say, okay, this is gossip. But sometimes it's subtle. And you just feel, I don't feel very comfortable with this conversation. Have you ever been there where you thought, oh, I just don't feel right about this? That's the Holy Spirit speaking to you. And sometimes, what do? You just have to take the hint from the Holy Spirit. I don't feel comfortable with this. Then what do? You can take a really caring approach. And you can say, if so-and-so knew that we were talking about them, I bet you they'd be really hurt. That's a really caring way to do it. It's not necessarily the way I'd handle it, but that's a good way to do it. He said, listen, if Gertrude knew, or if Bob knew that you were saying this, or we were saying this, this would be really hurtful. And sometimes that's enough of a hint. You can take an approach that's maybe the approach that I took with the person. It's more of a biblical approach. It's like, if you have a problem, maybe we should go to the person directly, because that's what Matthew 18 tells us to do. Or maybe you're even more direct than that. Maybe you have someone that keeps coming to you, and you've tried the caring approach, you've tried the biblical approach, but they keep talking about people to you. Maybe you need to do this. You need to say, if you keep talking about others, me and you will not be able to hang out. Because if they gossip to you, they will gossip about you. It's really important. You say, well, really, I really got to look at these three things. Like, I can try with a caring approach, and then I can go to this more direct biblical approach, and then I can really be that direct. Why? Because gossiping is really serious. God hates it, and it ruins people's lives. Some people will say, and you know what? Some people will say, you know what? There's times where we need to talk about somebody. And you know what? There is times. It's very, very rare. Here's an example. There's lots of times, and you'll hear, if you know me, we spend enough time talking, if I'm talking to Junior, and Junior's telling me something about Rochelle, like just talking about how awesome her Frico is and all that kind of stuff, and if I was going to say something, you know, I'm really worried about Rochelle because of this, I'll often say, and you'll remember me saying this, I'll say, if Rochelle was right here, I would say, because if you won't say something if the person's there, you're gossiping. And sometimes there's tough conversations that have to have. And sometimes you have to say, listen, if so-and-so was here, I would say this to them. That's a constructive conversation. Number two, sometimes you've got to get together with people to talk about a situation because you need to do some sort of intervention to help somebody. Whether that's for, sickness of some sort, or addiction, or, it doesn't matter what it is. There's been times in my life that I've had to be caught in conversations with 4, 5, 6 people, but the key to those conversations is everybody there has one goal in mind, and that goal is to help this person. And we're not just there saying, yeah, they suck, and they this, and they're terrible, and they're this, and they're that. It's about, listen, we're going to make a difference in this person's life. That's different, but it's very rare. I want you to know today that your words matter. It says this in Matthew 12, 36, 37. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. Just let that sink in. But I tell you that everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted or set free, and by your words you will be condemned. That, for me, one of the scariest verses in the entire Bible. Because when you talk as much as I do, you say lots of stupid things. You didn't have to agree so. But we'll all give an account because our words matter. James tells us that our words have the power of life and death. In closing this morning, here's my prayer for everyone here, is that you would be someone who gets caught speaking well of other people. Have you ever walked into a room and everyone stopped talking because they were talking about you? Yeah. My prayer would be that you would be people, that I would be a person that gets caught talking well about others. My prayer is that we would be for people, not against people. My prayer would be that we would be the solution, not the problem. My prayer would be that we would be people who thought the best rather than assume the worst. I want you to know that we serve a God of good news, that we've all sinned. We've all committed these necessary sins, or so we call them. But we serve a God of grace. What I would like us to do in closing today, I need your help. We're going to do 3 things. First, Denise is going to lead us in a song. And if we really want to see a change in our life, in our talk, and how we listen to people, there's only one way. And that is that God changes our hearts. Because in ourselves, we like to gossip. So why don't we stand as Denise sings this song, and then I got a couple really important things at the end.
Change my heart, oh God, make it ever true. Change my heart,